Hi there, everybody. Here is your lecture for Chapter 1, Art in the Stone Age. We're looking at Paleolithic here, Neolithic. Paleo, I always think of the paleo diet, the caveman diet. So paleo, caveman type stuff. Neo, just a little bit further on. Okay, so this is the cover of our book. That's a Vermeer of the famous girl with pearl earring. Okay, so these are our objectives for the chapter. Why do you think early humans decided to represent the world around them? How did they go from recognition to representation? That was where, the first artist was recognized. Here we have some maps. Oops. Okay, so we've got the UK, Europe, very important places in art history, early art history in Africa, and, Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Egypt. Oh, Egypt. Wow, yes. Okay, so here, Mesopotamia, huge. This is the Fertile Crescent. Okay, let's move along. The Hall of the Bulls, Lascaux Cave. This is in France. This is the most famous cave that artists of the Paleolithic era, where humans created representations of the world around them. Several important things I want you to notice. This artwork is huge. Like this bull right here is like 11 feet long. This entire artwork was created over a 2,000-year period. The animals appear both in silhouette. Silhouette is a filled-in shape, and outlines, so different styles. The animals appear to be standing on a ground line, so that's when you situate your objects, and they appear to be observing gravity, right? Standing on the ground. This is, in fact, like a sedimentary layer in the walls, but the artist used that as the ground line. So this is like an example where the setting has determined the form of the artwork in part. Even if you look at the kind of dimension of the bull, it comes forward, and that is just strictly due to the wall, the naturally occurring cave wall. Okay, the bull's horns appear in a twisted perspective. So if you look really carefully over here at the horns, one is on top of the bull's head, the other is coming out from the front, which is not, the correct way of observing in perspective, but it does demonstrate a bull better than the correct perspective would, so it's descriptive. Hold on, I wasn't done. Okay, and let's see. So this is just the artist describing the figure in more obvious detail. And this is the era where humans shifted from simply recognize the world around them to representing it in drawings and paintings. All right, now we're ready. So this water-worn pebble, no one can really say that this is an artwork, but because it could have been created naturally, but it does appear to have been manipulated, although it is 3 million years old, 3 million years BCE, so before our year 0. So that's, quite a long time ago. People still talk about it, though. Okay, and this example is twice as old as Lascaux. Notice that is a silhouette and in profile view. It was discovered in Africa. The methods that have been used to verify the authenticity of Paleolithic sculpture include chemical analysis, radiocarbon dating, and geological knowledge of stalactite formation. Some think that paleography is related to the Paleolithic period, but it is not. Graph means writing or text, so this study is about deciphering historic writing. We did not yet see a writing system in Paleolithic art for certain. This is probably everyone's favorite guy, the German lion man, human with feline, quote-unquote lion head. And this was constructed from mammoth ivory, suggesting that it held great importance because obtaining the ivory was very difficult. Many say that prehistoric art was influenced by shamanistic rituals. Shamans are believed to enter altered states of consciousness, like a trance, to interact with the spirit world. In Paleolithic art, artists use wood as writing or painting utensils, minerals for color, and mammoth ivory as a sculptural material. Metal was not yet used. So this is a super important artwork. Okay, another super important one. Paleolithic artists tended to represent only animals almost exclusively. However, the Venus of Willendorf shows the Paleolithic influence on health and fertility. She has no face, but her breasts and hips are very prominent. Her hair, or some say that this is like a straw hat, it's often the subject of some conversation as well. Okay, so fertility, big deal, right? Big deal. I mean, people still talk about things like this. So paleo man, thinking about the same kind of things that lots of men think about today. Okay, this sculpture is again created from a woolly mammoth ivory tusk. It again shows disregard for facial features. It's interesting that the woman does not have a mouth, or that her hair covering her hat is similar to that of the Venus of Willendorf from Germany. And this lady is from France. Okay, and let's see, this is the La Selle woman. It's been interpreted in so many ways. Notice again that her face is not important. Her reproductive features are prominent. How can its meaning be interpreted if we are to think of it in context? So we've got to in context, we've got to kind of go back to the way people thought about things back in this era. She's holding a bison horn, but that is merely descriptive. So that's only describing the artwork. Is she blessing all those who look upon her? Is she blessing her unborn child? Is it more complex than that? Many have written about her and her potential meaning. Again, a woman with no facial features. You can see her here on the wall, and this is a more detailed drawing of her. Her curves are very important. Remember that human representation is still very rare in Paleolithic art. Animals still reign supreme. This artwork's importance is that it is additive sculpture rather than subtractive. It was not carved, but built up from clay into the shapes of the bison. And this is another fascinating artwork carved from an antler. that uses the natural shape of the antler to determine the subject. It was created by carving the details with a sharp burin, which is a metal tool. Let me just say that most likely was not metal, just a sharp tool. Okay, here we see a big difference in comparison to the Hall of the Bulls in the Lascaux Cave in France from the first slide. This is from the caves in Altamira, Spain, and the bulls appear to float. There's no ground line whatsoever. They're just, floating up in the sky. The least helpful detail for determining the age of a Paleolithic artwork is style, because the style of the silhouettes and outlines remained for tens of thousands of years. So style really doesn't tell us where or when it's from. Okay, this artwork's kind of fascinating when you think about how it appears to have been created. Historians believe the artist used a hollow reed to blow pigment onto the surface, creating the spots on the horses and the negative handprints. So that's really pretty sweet. The artist had to put their hand up there and blow through their reed paint to create that signature. Another artwork from Lascaux, this time a horse. This one is nearly 5 feet in length and shows a symbol above the horse, which could be a tally mark, could be an early form of writing or recording numbers. No one is sure. This is not known as being writing per se. Still all visual. All right, so Paleolithic art. Wow, complex narratives. So we see like artists putting all these stories together. They're often thought to represent symbolism dedicated to the survival of the herd, which means food, clothing. That's like, your one-stop shop. Here in Lascaux, remember this one's famous for the Hall of the Bulls. It has a deep well area that is inaccessible. I don't even know how they got down there. So this is the find spot for the first known representation of a human male. So here we see the guy, right? We know it's a guy. Hello. If you research this artwork, you'll find a lot of thought about early shamanistic practices. Here in this well, how did they get down there? They've been found many early oil lamps, basically just a carved stone spoon that could be filled with oil in a wick and lit as a portable light source. I don't know how. We can only speculate. Here's another cave in France. Göbekli. Notice that the artist is not using a twisted perspective. Sorry, this is Chauvet. The horns are represented not as side by side, but as one behind the other in a more realistic fashion. So notice the horns. So this artist really had it figured out. Not twisted perspective. And here's Göbekli. Göbekli Tepe, I don't know if I'm saying that right, is in Turkey, and it's one of the oldest known temples. The first nod to creating a physical space for religion. And here the animals are stacked one above the other. This is Jericho. Jericho is super famous for its walled complexes. If you've heard of the walls of Jericho, this is it. This was built in about 7500 BCE. Huge advantages. Okay, here we're in Neolithic period. So we've moved on from Paleo to Neo. 3 things to know. The most important thing is that they were the first to domesticate plants and animals, cultivate crops, raise animals. They were also the first to honor the dead, creating graves that have been discovered, which is pretty crazy. This is like our first real civilization, civilized society. Anatolia and Mesopotamia, otherwise known as the Fertile Crescent, they were the first known areas where humans made the transition from hunter-gatherer to raising stock, raising agriculture. This area became really well known for having great conditions, excellent for farming. The fact that they had food and were living well, it made residents of Jericho susceptible to nomads. So they created these walls on this Neolithic village to protect themselves from marauding nomads. So this is like fairly modern society. They've got crops, livestock, graveyards, and walls to protect them from those who were less advanced. So very interesting. This guy, oof. I'm sure it was beautiful at the time, but this Neolithic human skull-based sculpture was found in Jericho. It was supposedly meant to be a resemblance of a living person. They used plaster added to the skull to recreate the features, and seashells. Yeah. So quite a difference from what we've seen so far. Again, we got a human figure this is from Ain Ghazal, and these figures are first sculptures really that weren't just, remember the buffalo a little while back, were constructed from clay, but they were still part of the environment. These are like freestanding sculptures, and they were made out of plaster and reed. Also bitumen, and bitumen is a tar-like substance, so presumably, that was like their glue. Okay, here we've got Katal Hoyuk. This is what it would have looked like if the structures had survived. So this is an artist representation, current artist, what this would have looked like then. Okay, and this is a mural painting inside Katal Hoyuk. And we see a human figure, lots of human figures, and a variety of poses and groupings. Still hunting, super important. Look how big that animal is. Oh my gosh, this is way back. The figures are represented in a composite view. And that means like the lower half of the body is seen in profile, while the upper half is seen in face on, like frontal. So that is really notable. Partly from the side, partly frontal. We'll again see this type of representation in Egyptian art. Okay, Scarabray. This is Paleolithic civilization in one of the most remote parts of Northern Europe. And this area has proved to be an archaeological gold mine. Fascinating. Okay, and this is Hagar Keem, the huge complex civilization. We're just wrapping it up here. Post and lintel construction. This is the oldest method of spanning a passageway, and we see it in Stonehenge coming up next. So here we have the henge style monument. It's found almost exclusively in Britain. The primary form of monuments from the Neolithic period is in northwestern Europe, such as Stonehenge. It's a megalithic structure. Megalith is a massive shaped stone. We have recently discovered that Stonehenge was only part of a much larger ritual complex, adding to our overall understanding of this monument. And it is notable that in Northern Europe, one Neolithic construction has not yet been found. A settled village. Not yet. Okay, last slide. Human figures distinguish Neolithic artwork from Paleolithic. Okay, so we're talking mostly about men. There's that one guy that they found in the well. Remember him? He's pretty much it. And it wasn't until the Mesolithic period that we see the first taming of the dog. So just in case you encounter any of that kind of material, this is it. Okay, that's it for lecture 1.